Taking a look at a more serious matter that we also saw this week. Disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein was convicted of committing a criminal sex act in the first degree and rape in the third degree.
Now, the guilty verdict was hailed as a turning point in the hashtag #MeToo movement. He was acquitted of the more serious charges of predatory sexual assault and first-degree rape.
Yeah, earlier this week, also Newsroom Africa's Ayanda Nyati sat down with Vanita Daniels. She's the director at Rise Up Against Gender-Based Violence. Take a look at this.
Reigned as one of the most influential producers in Hollywood, has been found guilty of 2 felony sex crimes. His Manhattan trial has become a watershed moment for the Me Too movement. But the jury acquitted Weinstein of 2 of the most serious charges against him. That's predatory sexual assault. The verdict offers a measure of justice to the dozens of women who've come forward with similar allegations against Weinstein. For many, the trial was a crucial test to the efforts to hold powerful men accountable for sexual harassment in the workplace. And joining us to discuss this issue now is Vanita Daniels, who's Director of Fundraising at NGO Rise Up Against Gender-Based Violence. Vanessa, thanks for your time. Welcome to Newsroom Africa.
Thank you for having me.
It's undoubtedly a big step forward for the Me Too movement. That's the Harvey Weinstein judgment, that is. But what does it mean, I guess, for men who are found to be perpetrating these kind of, crimes, essentially?
Well, it is a big moment. Obviously, he was acquitted on the most serious charges,
yes.
So that is a let down, especially for his victims and survivors. But I think that it sends a clear message that it's not business as usual and that we require for men to change their behavior. And I'm positive that more and more men are going to be held accountable.
The revelations of Harvey Weinstein's abuse helped propel the hashtag #MeToo movement, and here at home too, where women in film and television have come out with allegations of sexual abuse and abuse of power by men in the industry.
Now, joining us to spill the beans is writer and academic Refiloe Lepere. A very good morning to you, Refiloe. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
We're looking at the case and obviously the implications that it has now had the world on since we obviously heard of Harvey Weinstein. The UK have had their members in Parliament also have to take some stock in account. But there have also been sentiments echoed right here in South Africa, as we mentioned. So looking at the fact that this case perhaps represents that people are not above the law, that justice will run its course. I mean, what do you think the implications are with a South African context to date?
I think part of what it does for victims and women is to give them kind of prop up, right? That they can speak up and that there should be a level of consequences. And I think part of historically in South Africa, when women would speak up, there was always retaliation, you'd lose a job, you'd lose a gig. So therefore, there's been a real silence around what happens. And even men and women around sexual harassment in the workplace is that even if you see something happen and you want to say something, you won't, because the retaliation, you would lose work. And the precarity of our industry leaves everyone wanting. So it leaves everybody in a very exploitative state. And so therefore, because we are all exploited, we're feeling that if I say something, I'm going to lose this gig, I'm going to lose any other gig, and it's a very small industry. Therefore, no one used to talk. I think this moment, what it highlights for us, it's that victims can speak up. And then, but also moves us into then what is the consequences? Because I think part of it has been that there has not been clear guidelines around what happens when I've reported. And I mean, in this case with Harvey, it was clear sexual assault, it was clear rape, and a lot of the conversations that we're having is what does it mean, in our industries, the quid pro quo, sexual harassment things, it's choices that people are saying, but you made a choice, you didn't. So what are the implications for perpetrators, and how do we shame and name and make sure that they're out there, and then what will happen to them?
Yeah.
Now, how pervasive is the issue of sexual assault and abuse of power in the South African film and TV industry at the moment?
Oh, wow. I think I think it's quite. I think everyone, we understand. I mean, if you think of film, television, theater also, and the arts, are very male-dominated. I mean, just looking around the room, it's males on camera, males who are, so it's a very male space. And so part of sexual harassment is not just the idea of just the big idea of thinking of the rape only, but it's also the small things of creating an environment that is quite uncomfortable for everyone, male and female, to exist in, where sexual innuendo, sexual jokes, and so there's this really understanding, as if we all walk in, that's a boys' club, and that you must either play along or get out, and if you don't want to be here, that's how we do things. So it's also that, and also the why it's pervasive is that we are burdened with that. When we work together on set, on rehearsals, on anything, is we become quite close and family-like. And so the implication of having to report your family member and you become tight.
Yeah.
And that implication is such a burden on the victims that I am then ruining the family. And even other people who are saying, but I didn't see that as anything wrong, it was a joke, or he's like that, and this is why Harvey also continued, because everybody knew that he was...
They were enablers of abuse.
Yes, everybody knew, and they said, no, but that's what he is, that's how he is. And if you didn't know, he is a fag. He is, I mean, there's all sorts of jokes that are going around that. And so we also work in those environments where, didn't you know? Oh, they are, just avoid him, or just avoid those people. But it's this idea that it's quite pervasive, and I think part of it has been that people, everyone, males and females, keep quiet because that's the industry. And instead of saying, well, how do we reimagine the industry? How do we think differently about the industry?
And the hashtag #MeToo movement, which this case probably also we saw how strong the movement is. So South Africans had a few sentiments to echo on this regard. Let's take a look at some of the tweets that have come through from actresses Rami Chwene, Florence Masebe, about the case, perhaps related to a South African context. So Rami Chwene is saying, South African Harveys have been opening the industry for desperate artists in return for sexual favors for years. Fear victimization and blacklisting silenced a lot of talent. Soon they'll break their silence and come for you. Powerful big shots. Even your money will not save you.
Wow, that's very powerful. Rami Chwene continues to say, dear executive producer, please sue me. I want to see something. Regards.
So Refiloe goes back to what you were speaking about, the entire system, also the enablers of abuse. I mean, it's not only limited to male figures. I mean, the people who remain silent about the issues, the system itself perpetuates that. But looking at a South African context, and it sounds like a warning of some sorts from Rami. I mean, what would you make of her tweets, and perhaps what it's the ripple effects that are to come from that?
I think a tweet also speaks back to this idea that a lot of the times when, if you think about sexual harassment, it's a play on power, right? And so when someone has always gotten away with something, it has always been the ability to perform their power well. So part of the Harvey Weinstein moment has always been that he had enough money to buy the cops, everyone, the media, in a way that changed the story and in a way that shifted it. And I think part of her warning and the conversation she's trying to enable for all of us is that if there's a large, and why now the story kind of like really became important and the Me Too movement rose, was that there was enough people who came forward. There was a lot of people who spoke out. There was a lot of people who said enough is enough. And I think part of it is, I think it's a call, not just a warning to the predators, but it's a call for, if we don't stand, then of course it's not going to stop. But it's also that even people who see something is to say something. But I think what I like what you said very importantly is that there's a systemic, the whole system itself. We've built this house that we assume that women can easily opt out of it and say, well, I didn't want to be sexually harassed, so I left, but it's not. It's that everyone has bought into it and created cover-ups for various people, and everyone. So there's been a very concerted effort by different stakeholders, by different people. So, and that has made sure that this thing exists and plays itself out. So if you think about now in the US and the UK, they're doing a very clear guidelines of how to be on set. clear guidelines around it is the employer's duty to make the environment safe and free from sexual harassment. So if I feel I'm sexually harassed on a set in New York or in the UK, in London, I can go back to the employer, not necessarily just the perpetrator, but to the employer, to the producer, and say you're also liable for my trauma. You also have to pay for that trauma.
It goes back to what you're saying about a system cannot fail those it was never designed to protect.
Right.
So an issue that we've also seen is couch casting.
Yeah, what's up with that phenomenon?
Producers taking advantage of their power. Oh, Sips tea. My tea's was better there.
I think couch casting has been, the world over, has been this thing that we all laugh about, and we find it, but it is a real trauma for women who have experienced it, because part of what happens in couch casting is that you will not get the job if you don't do something. And I think part of the new guidelines that, for example, the Guild of Actors are trying to write up and create is the idea that to not have auditions in hotels, in people's cars, in, you know, the idea that the audition should be a public performance that everyone gets to witness and be present with you. And so part of the couch casting was about that. There's also this idea that women would desire that rather than have it. But actually, we would rather desire to be in a place where I'm safe, where I can be seen for my talent. Because we're all coming in. I think part of the other thing that when we have these conversations, we forget that we're coming in because we're creatives. We want to experience and do work. We want to create the work that we want. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be treated with dignity for the work that I'm creating and be present about it and be clear about my work. But when you do the couch casting, it's a space where you take away the dignity. It's a space where you take away my ability to be able to be professional, even when I desired to be that. So it's a thing that has been continuing for years, but I think part of what now has been, I think a lot of people are reimagining it, is that can we have a conversation about how we're doing it and why we're doing it and what is the point of having to create such a space.
Refiloe, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. That was writer, director, and academic Refiloe Lepere joining me, or us rather, for the tea this Saturday morning, following the guilty verdict in Harvey Weinstein's sexual assault and rape case, and the warning to sexual predators in South Africa's industry.